Sam with Nexus Workshop, and we are looking through the Universal Prop Controller. As we're in here, I'm in the config page right now. I just did a whole video on all the different sections of the config page, how to get into it, and what we have up at the top there. And now we're going to start looking at the actual pages. And that first page we're going to look at is the connections page. Connections page has a couple different sections within it, and it's something you're going to see throughout. You have all these different sections. It's always going to only let you open one at a time. So because they take up a lot of space on the page, they're going to open and automatically collapse the others. The first section we're going to look at is connection and identity. And another thing you're going to see throughout here is every time I mouse over something, it's going to give me that little tooltip. Hey, what is this? Inside my connection and identity, the first thing I'm going to do is name my prop. I name my prop, that is going to be its host name. So that shows up here at the top. And then it also is what I would go to if I want to navigate into this. I can go to samsprop.local, and if I'm on the network with it, that's its host name. I can get to it. I don't need to know its IP address. I'll also show you in a later video the controller manager app that we have built. It's the only actual app we have built. All of these are just loading up a web server from the device. That one is an actual app, and it lets you discover all the devices on your network and can be a much easier way of managing your fleet if you have multiples of these. In here, I gave it my name. I'm going to connect it up to my network, my SSID, and my password. I do, of course, have a scan button here, which will show all the networks that it sees. I can select one and just enter the password. In here, I have the ability to leave DHCP turned on. That's the default. Or I could turn it off if I want to do a static IP. Don't do static IPs. I find very little need for them in a modern setup. I would rather you set a static IP for it, or a reserved DHCP address within your router instead of going static, because that way you're not going to get conflicts and things like that. Static IPs can be a little bit of a mess. Historically, people have used them. I'm going to have a whole video on, at least one video on networking, what all of that means. But for right now, if you don't know, just leave that checked. Ethernet is going to automatically get preferred. So if you plug in Ethernet and it can connect to it, it's going to use that over the Wi-Fi. But it also gives you the ability here to turn DHCP, leave it on, or turn it off, which means you're setting a static IP. And when you uncheck that, it'll give you all the fields for, hey, what's your static IP, your gateway, your subnet, all those things. Again, another video, we'll talk a lot about that. This checkbox for hide AP SSID after startup window. What this is for is when you are not connected to a Wi-Fi network, or not connected to a network rather, it's going to say, hey, I don't have anything, so spin up my own. And it's going to spin up its own AP. That's how you're going to connect it the very first time so that you can get it configured, unless you're just plugging it in Ethernet. And when you do that, it is going to spin up based on its host name, or its device name here. So Sam's prop would be the name of the Wi-Fi that I would see on my phone or whatever I'm connecting with. And it has no password. Obviously, that's not great to stay around like that. We don't want to put a password on it because that's also how you might recover it. If you lose it on the network, you can't find it, you can't get to it. That's one of the ways that you can recover it. But if you are someone who's not going to actually put it onto your network, you're just going to connect to it to configure it and then leave it alone. I also don't want to leave this SSID for something where someone can come in and just mess with your prop. And so you would want to check that box. What that box is going to do is it's going to say, hey, for 5 minutes after I power up, you can show that AP. But after that, go ahead and hide it, get rid of it so that people can only get to it if they know it. A little harder for you to recover it now because you have to know it, you have to be able to find it, but also gives you the ability to just power cycle it, and now it pops back up and you can see it and connect to it. And that gets it hidden so that people can't connect to it, so that someone out of the know isn't going to get onto it. Also, obviously, if you're doing that, you don't have it on your network, there's not a whole ton of risk because there's nothing on the network with it. It's just the prop is the only thing we're worried about. And then we have this thing called share credentials. I'm going to be reworking this a little bit before we actually launch, but ultimately what that is, just so you know, is that once I have one board on my network, I'm going to be able to come in and basically say push, and it will push its network credentials to all the other ones that it can see, not even on my network. So it will be able to push to any devices that are powered up and within range, and the range is pretty big. That's going to be very, very cool if you are setting up fleets or a lot of these. That's going to really save you a lot of time so that you can just come, power up your new prop, go into the controller manager, hit push, and it will push all the credentials out to them, pull them all online, and then you can go and start doing your configs. One thing about this section is that it does need to be manually saved. Most of the things within the UI do not need to be saved, but this one does need to be manually saved. As soon as I make a change, this button, Save and Connect, will start to glow green and letting me know that I need to click it. I click it, it's going to do a full reboot so it can reconnect. Here I have my MQTT broker settings. If I am using MQTT, this is where I would set it up. I can set the hostname and IP address, and it can fall back between those if I put both. I can put a username and a password. I don't ever use authentication on my MQTT, really. I'm securing my network instead of securing my broker. But you can put that there if you want. My device identity, this room prefix, also has to do with MQTT. It has to do with what the prefix on the address is going to be. We'll have a lot of videos about MQTT, what all those things mean later. Here's that admin password. I'm leaving it blank. I don't have a password right now. You definitely should. By the time you're actually putting this into production, you should put a password onto this. That way you don't have just anyone who has access to your network who can get into your controller. Your controller is behind your network, so they do have to be on your network to be able to get to it, but that admin password will let you secure it so that you don't have people who are on the network but shouldn't be messing with settings, accidentally messing with settings. There are ways to recover the admin password if it really come down to it. We'll talk more about that later, but for right now, just know that you should have one, you should write it down, you should make it safe. That was the connection identity section. Simple UI is where we're going to have that secondary settings mode that I've mentioned before. What this allows, when you turn this on, you can set a separate password. So now I have my operator page, no password, my simple UI, maybe password, yes or no, and then my admin password, probably password, but not necessarily. Simple mode allows me to go section by section and choose what do I want to have access to. So maybe I come in and I say the only thing I want to have access to is setting the network and setting this one variable. So that's all I can do. I can't do any of the other things. It's also possible for me to get very granular or very big. And this basically allows me to set a smaller subset of things. Think of it less access control, though it can be access control, more focus. So again, if I'm a prop builder and I'm making a prop for someone, I might give them only access to change the network and the passcode, but not give them the ability to add modules and things like that. Not that I'm like holding it from them, but just saying, hey, you don't need to know all the things I knew to get this set up. You can just do this and give them a little easier barrier of entry. That's really what Simple UI is about. Inputs, outputs, and modules is our actual meat and potatoes. What are we connecting to this thing? Up here, you will see that I have a lot of modules already added. This is another one of the sections that has to manually save. So when I make any changes in here, this apply IO changes and reboot is going to go green. I could keep making changes within this section, but they don't actually take effect until I click that button. That's going to give it a full reboot, and that's going to initialize all those pin modes and get all the backends set up so that the actual thing does the thing. Here in Add Device, I can see a list of all the different devices that I could add. Right now, when I click one of these devices, it's going to add it and immediately close this out. If I want to add multiple, I can turn on this toggle. It always starts off, but if I turn that on, then now I could click, 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 click. If I want to add 4 buttons, I just click this 4 times. And then when I'm done, I can come click close. Each time as they add, they're going to try to find an available pin. So it's going to try to look and automatically see if there's one available. If I have something like a I2C IO expander, then all of my buttons and simple inputs and things that can work on it are going to try to prioritize it so they don't use up my more sort of expensive buttons, my fancier button or pins that can do other things. If I have buses, like here I have an RFID reader, so I have an SPI bus. Those pins are all here. If I had an I2C bus, that would also show up here. Down here for the individual items, I can filter so I can see all of my modules, or I can come and say, nope, I just want to look at my simple modules, or let's look at my simple outputs. My simple outputs, I only have one. It's this one called emag. I've called it emag. I can call it whatever I want. And it is the type of a relay. So it's a type relay. It's on pin 47, which on my breakout board is L5. And I can do all the things about it. So like this one, I've said whether it's active high, or if I uncheck that, then it's active low. I can set flash mode, which is something we'll talk about on relays in particular. And I can set the on and the off label. Those labels are going to be used in other places. Like if I look at my simple inputs here, I've got these 2 different types of simple inputs. This one's a digital button, so it gets on label and off label. This one's an analog input, so it doesn't have labels. I have input modules where I've got like my RFID, I've got lighting modules, which is my pixel pins, and I've got a sound module on here. That's all the different things that I have. Some things you're going to see throughout the interface constantly is this little duplicate button, this little delete button, and then the add button is always going to use this plus. But you can use those things to make a copy of the thing I have, delete it, whatnot. I can click and drag anywhere I see this little hamburger menu. I can click and drag those around. That is going to let me reorder those, in particular for how they show up on the operator page. Yeah. The last section in this page of connections is the integrations section. This is where I'm going to add systems. Systems are external things that I connect to. So if I come in here to a system, I could add an MQTT, HTTP, I can add OSC. You're going to see this expand out a lot before we open or before we launch with things like our COGS module and our Mithric N3 module. Those are going to be popping up here. It's going to be basically, those are just kind of wrappers around MQTT or HTTP, existing modules that are here, but it's going to give you a little more streamlined version that talks that language. And those are, again, going to be ways to get information in and out. When I create one, so like if I create an MQTT one, I can give it a name, and I could say that this is where I'm going to talk to M3. It's enabled, it's MQTT type, here's my base topic. I can set a couple things about it. I can choose, these are all the things that I want to go to it. I can also, when I have one of these, I can create actions and output sequences that involve commands going to this. Now that I've specified this, I can also add a manual route here. This manual route is a thing that I will respond to. So if I know that, hey, you know, again, by the time we launch, we hope you see just a Mithric 1. But if I have a system and I say, hey, I know that the system is going to say this over HTTP, I can create a manual route that says, great, catch it, listen for that. And then that manual route will trigger things or become a triggerable input for things whenever that manual route comes in. And it can also do things like carry that payload. So again, this is how I talk to external systems. And that external system could be another one of our prop controllers. Yeah, that is the connections page. I'm going to move on to the next section. Hope to see you there.